Now that Diamond Select has taken over the reins for the Pacific Rim movie franchise, let's see how well their figures stack up as we have a look at the Gypsy Avenger action figure. Based on the Pacific Rim sequel, Pacific Rim Uprising, it's been 10 years since the Battle of the Breach, and the oceans are still but restless. Vindicated by the victory at the Breach, the Jaeger program has evolved into the most powerful global defense force in human history. The PPDC now calls upon its best and brightest to rise up and become the next generation of heroes. When the kaiju threat returns, we will be ready. Gypsy Avenger honors the heroic legacy of her namesake as the flagship leader of the Mark VI fleet. More than just a Jaeger, she is the symbol of hope to millions. This action figure, it features approximately 15 points of articulation and was sculpted by Big Shot Toy Works. Before we have a look at the figure and the accessories, let's figure out how tall Gypsy Avenger stands. Would it surprise you to hear that the figure is 8.5 inches in height? If you've collected anything from Diamond Select over the years, you probably will not be surprised to see that this is a very tall figure. While other companies are trying to find ways to cut costs, cut back the resources on plastic that they use, I'm not going to mention anyone's names, Diamond Select continues to churn out large figures. Case in point here, the Jaeger of Gypsy Avenger. Case in point, really, any large Marvel Select figure, whether it be a Juggernaut, whether it be Abomination, plastic and resources that they use to make their figures never seems to dawn on them that, you know, they should be cutting costs. You still get large, big, bulky figures from Diamond Select, and I would say Gypsy Avenger is no different at 8.5 inches in height. Why don't we actually run down the list of accessories, and then we'll have a look at Gypsy Avengers. First things first, comes with a pair of dual plasma chainsaws, which are very nicely sculpted here. It may look at first glance that they are sharp. They are not, so you can run your finger, not that you would be running your finger across the blades, but rest assured that they are not sharp. They will attach. I'll show you how they attach in a second. Some of the accessories attach by the sockets of the hands, primarily if you are changing out the hands. The arms, however, you're going to be unplugging by the bicep area. And again, I'll show you that in a second. So it comes with 2 plasma chainsaws. Primarily also in silver, where you kind of got that bluish gray happening in primarily all the armor, but very, very cool indeed. Moving along to the still equally large accessories, Avenger also comes with a chain sword. The retracted version of the chain sword, you can see the individual links, however, how everything has connected itself together. Could have been cool if they had come with a variation to this as well, but at the very least, does come included with it. And again, just want to show you the cool details here on each of the individual arms. No detail was spared, no paint was spared. I'm impressed even like by the little markings here, the red and the blue little stripes, as well as the red right around the thumb area. Keeping in mind, there are companies as well that, at the very least, you can't even get things like bumpers and stuff painted. And Diamond Select yet would go in and paint a little red marking here right by the thumb. So that's got to say something for them. Very intricate looking little component pieces on the interior there of the arm. And again, I'll show you how those plug into place in a second. And I guess while we are looking at the arm accessories, also comes with plasma casters, these kind of rotating wheels of doom that can project energy. Very cool though. Two slightly varied from one another. I do like that quite a bit, actually. I think if I am probably going to be displaying Avenger, I'm maybe going to be picking one of these, as I think it would look quite nice in the sockets of its shoulders, or sockets of its arms. Try not to drop it, though, in the process of doing so, as I almost just did. And last, certainly not least, a pair of Dynamic or gripping hands, not quite a gripping hand, but kind of more of a dynamic hand, I would suppose. And again, you've got that kind of aged, scratched away metal happening there on the hands. Again, a little bit of that red marked in there. They kind of just left that out, but no, they did not. You can see all the individual, not that these move, but you can see how the knuckles and the individual finger joints would have worked. Again, these are just stacks and you can't bend them or anything like that. Okay, so let's talk how you would change these out. We'll start really with the hands first. I'm going to pop the hands out just to show you how they swap into place. It's just a singular peg. It's just one long peg. You're just going to fit that into the hole there. And a simple swap out is what you get here. Through the process of doing so, one thing you may find regularly happening is that the shoulder pad here, the top shoulder pad, wants to pop out. There's really not a lot of clearance, I have to admit. If you look at the peg here, it doesn't really stick out far enough to clear. Let me just show you where that plugs into place. If you snap that into place, there is very little wiggle room. Any little bit of movement I find has popped those shoulders out. It's nothing drastic because really at the end of the day, I can simply just glue those into place if I find that they are problematic. It does give you a little bit of extra posability as these are ball joints, so you can kind of move the shoulders around. But then keep in mind, as you are doing so, you may find those shoulders popping out from time to time. Let's, you know what, let's change out the chainsaws. Let's change for the chainsaws. I really do like the chainsaws also as well. So instead of actually pulling it here, or really here, well, I guess here is where you're pulling it. I was going to say like further down. The joint is happening right here in between the bicep and essentially the forearm. Grab the bicep and you just kind of want to wiggle and pop that out. You may get that experience kind of running over your spine where you're like, ooh, don't break, don't break, don't break. Luckily, it doesn't break. It's a nice big bulky peg. I do find though, getting the arms with chainsaws in place, I find that the joint doesn't feel like it fits in as well as, say, some of the other arms. Again, you can do it on the other side here, grabbing the bicep, popping that out. There we go. There goes the chainsaw. We'll just retrieve that and pop this one into place. This one, to its credit, does actually fit into place. This one, on the other hand, literally on the other hand, I find just doesn't sit well into the socket. I'm not really sure why, but it just doesn't seem to sit well when I'm trying to plug it in. And there's what the Gypsy Avenger looks like with the larger kind of assault, ground and pound sort of weapons in place. Again, this joint, this peg, just doesn't seem to want to fit well enough. I guess to the one problem it faces also is I never quite understand, I don't quite know where to grab the figure to get a firm enough grip to plug this into place. Again, it just kind of pops out. So we'll try it with just the regular hand here. And it plugs in fine. So maybe I may have to, I don't know, check maybe the joint, see if there's something that's happening specifically with that joint, as it should be really the same joint as the same plug as the other ones. Displaying them ultimately, I mean, I can just really move the arms, and then if I'm not going to have to necessarily worry that the arms are going to be falling out. I think for the rest of this review, I'm going to pop the other hand out because we're going to do a lot of moving around on stuff. I want to make sure I've got a good firm enough planting of the sockets, the pegs into the sockets, so we can have a look at the figure. Okay, so the Gypsy Avenger. I love this figure. But the obvious thing you may notice as I'm having a look at the figure is she's a bit on the loose side. Primarily the joints that attach to the leg sockets I find are very, very loose. So let's spend a little bit of time talking about that. You'll notice a big gap between the sockets and the ball joints. There's this big kind of hollowed cavity there. And inside there, if you can actually see it, sits two very, very thin rods. The rods that are connecting the lower torso, the lower lower half, so to speak, plugging it into the leg. I do find it sits a little on the loose side. It does look as if, see, I would not want to try to take that out and put some floor polish or something on the ball joint just to kind of tighten that up, because I don't know which part would give way first. Ultimately, you can kind of remedy it by bringing the joints out, bringing the legs out, which seem to tighten this part of the leg. But I do find like the lower legs still sit a little on the loose side. I do want to stress this, though, as something I felt necessary to bring up in this review, but it may not be across the board. I mean, just because I've got necessarily loose joints in the legs, please, you know, that results may vary. The figure that you have, you may luck out and actually have more stiffer joints. But I did notice getting her out of package, the Avenger seems to sit with a little bit of a loose leg, and actually on both legs sit a little on the loose side. Having a look at the figure, I absolutely adore this figure. At the beginning of this review, I had mentioned that Diamond Select is now the torchbearer, so to speak, of the Pacific Rim line, previously owned by NECA. Now, NECA, to their credit, did do decent enough figures. I really did like their figures quite a bit, but there seemed always to be size restrictions. I don't want to say restrictions, because restrictions is the bad word for it, but if I still had those figures, which ultimately I don't, and I put them side by side, I would notice a much more dynamic sizing and overall shape to the Diamond Select. There's something about their pieces, when you put them next to, say, a NECA, for example, I would feel like I'd gravitate a little bit more towards the Avenger here. And it's not simply just a case that Gypsy Danger and Avenger are obviously different designs, but I do like the bigger sized aspects of the Diamond Select pieces. If not for the fact, again, I just wish that the lower limbs weren't as loose as they were. The face, and if you want to call it the face, the helmet, and otherwise the torso, are very reminiscent as something that would be a carryover from the original Gypsy Danger. I really do like the design aspects of it, and Diamond Select has done a fantastic job. Primarily, the colors here are kind of a bluish gray, and amongst the bluish gray, you've got kind of these little accent areas, little panels here of silver. They run down the side of the torso and run down the lower middle here of the torso as well. Now, granted, I can't credit necessarily Diamond Select for doing this. They're basically taking it from the designs that the movie came up with. But I think they translated it very well here to figure form. Love the little scratchings, as I had mentioned earlier, the wears, and little areas in which you can see that the metal has been scratched away, or at the very least, the paint that's on the plastic has been kind of worn away. So you've got these kind of silver scratchings that are happening through primarily all of really the armor itself. The little intricate areas in which the leg joints and any really areas of the robot that would be moving has these very cool little intricate panels, pistons, and levers allowing it to move. And there goes one of the shoulder pad areas again. Now, I have to be obviously critical in this figure review. I can't simply just say it's a great figure across the board. It does have some problems. Pegs not connecting in place, shoulder pads popping up from time to time, and otherwise somewhat loose on the lower legs, which is unfortunate because from a design standpoint and aesthetically, it's such a nice looking figure. It's sculpted well, it's painted immaculately. It's just a shame that I guess the design really is what sort of where the figure suffers, because of the very thin nature of the way pegs have to be attached. Does end up equaling a slightly loose figure, at least from the lower legs. Again, I can't stress this enough. It may not necessarily be all the figures. It's just I'm noticing it based on solely the figure that I have here. When it comes to its posability, the head rotates back and forth with what looks to be on a ball joint socket there. It actually has two ball joints. There's a main ball joint that attaches the arm itself to the socket area of the upper torso. Then there's a secondary joint here, but as you may move the figure, you may notice that some of the shoulder pad may pop off from time to time. It's bound to happen. A little bit of a wiggle happening right around the top torso, the top shoulder area here. The Avenger also has what looks to be a single hinge, possibly a double hinge happening. No, it's just a single hinge. Anything after that, the arms will pop out. Rotation all the way in the hand hinges back and forth. An upper torso ball joint. Hopefully you can see inside there. Good range of motion happening there. Nothing on the lower legs, or the lower torso. The legs themselves have a really sufficient amount of articulation. You can kind of see how everything kind of gets working happening here. It looks like there's a hinge ball joint happening here, and then there's the ball joint happening in there. Again, I'd love to take the legs off, but again, I'm a little worrisome about breaking something on the interior there. Maybe adding a bit of floor polish. You can also, as a quick fix, another fix you could do, if you ever get a ball joint, you could put a little bit of clear nail polish on that, just to kind of bulk up the size of the ball joint. It may actually help to make the legs a little bit tighter. Again, I don't know how much I want to be taking that off, just running the risk that it may break me trying to remove it. The figure will stand, but you may have to just kind of compensate and just make sure that everything's kind of stable on the figure. You may also want to make use of a display stand just to kind of get everything kind of going for it. It's just a shame that the legs and the knees really are the two loose ends of the figure. You got a double hinge happening on the knee area. You have an ankle pivot or ankle rocker happening there, and a hinge back and forth. For the merits of its design and the merits of its accessories, I really do like Gypsy Avenger. And a testament to Diamond Select, I really think Diamond Select was the best company to be handling this property. It's unfortunate, though, specifically just this figure that we're looking at in this review is excessively loose. Excessively loose in the upper legs, the sockets that attach to the lower half, and the joints in the legs. If you can get those straight enough, you really don't have a problem. Or you can try to remedy that by adding some additional stuff to the joints to tighten up those legs a little bit. Looking at everything else from a total package, I love this figure. It has a few little nitpicks here and there, little small problems, more primarily with the way its lower legs are working. The top half is good. The lower half gets a little worrisome, but overall I do really like this figure a lot. Out of the gate, Diamond Select delivers a strong release with Pacific Rim Uprising's Gypsy Avenger. The sculpt is good, the paint is incredible, articulation is good, and the accessories are really top-notch. One of my favorite things about this particular figure, above and beyond the fact that you're getting a 7.5 inch tall figure, so you really get your money's worth, I think, when it comes to Diamond's releases. One of my favorite things about it is the paint application. I love the scratched wear-away areas of the metal, because it does look like it's something that Gypsy Avenger has been in several different battles, and it shows here on the figure. The accessories are top-notch. You get a lot of accessories in different ways to mix and match exactly how you want to display the figure. Some of the changing out of the arms, I seem to have problems where some of the pegs just don't seem to connect 100%, but it's something I could easily live with. Talking a little bit about the articulation, across the board I said they, for the most part, scored high. The articulation benefits this figure because you can get it in different poses and different looks, but it's slightly a bit of a detriment to this figure as well, because of really small, thin pegs that were used on the legs and very loose knees does make for a figure that's a little bit trickier to get to stand. Now, I do have to stress this again. Over the course of this review, I had problems with this figure that I picked up. It's not to say that every single release of Gypsy Avenger is going to have the same problem, but I feel necessary to mention it in this review. I'm very happy with how this figure turned out. Again, it's got tons of different accessories. There's lots of different ways I can pose it. I may have a little bit of a problem, though, posing it. So I may have to kind of just play around with what will work, and hopefully the loose legs will not become an ongoing problem and not worsen over the course of time. I may find the means to maybe add a little bit of nail polish if I can try to get those legs off and maybe broaden the ball joints, and maybe that may be able to fix the problems, at least with the legs. The knees I can work with, but the top thigh area might be a little bit more of the problem. As you can see though, in final looks, I still managed to get it in a pretty cool looking pose, but again, I just wish that the leg joints were a little stiffer than what they were. Other than that, I'm very happy to have a look at this figure and have it now in my collection. I can only hope that Diamond Select will release more Jaegers and other Pacific Rim figures, because I definitely would think that they are the better company to be handling the property. Today we were having a look at the Diamond Select Pacific Rim. This was the Pacific Rim Uprising Gypsy Avenger action figure. If you guys want to check out some more from the folks over at Diamond Select, you can head over to their YouTube channel. In fact, to find it, you can head over to my main page, and it's one of the featured channels. So if you guys want to head over there and have a look at some of the upcoming releases before they hit store shelves. Also, make sure you hit that little subscribe button. It's just below this video, so you'll never miss a beat when it comes to future videos coming onto this channel. We're going to have a look at some more Pacific Rim Uprising figures, so stay tuned for those. And as always, thanks for watching. I'll see you guys next time.